Hello and welcome to my channel Soul GPS. This is Eva, and in today's video I wanted to move us a little bit closer into the realm of healthy relationships. Of course, we will still talk about people who have narcissistic tendencies, narcissistic personalities, and so on and so forth. But I wanted to juxtapose that with what it feels like to actually enter a healthy relationship, because so many of us, especially the serial narcissist daters like myself, we don't want to fall back into a narcissistic relationship, but it can be really, really easy to do so. And there are many reasons why it can be easy to do so. One of which is early conditioning towards being with narcissistic people, and therefore not really being able to recognize it because it feels so normal. It could also be that narcissists have a lot of tricks up their sleeve, and the relationships are usually very exciting, they make us anticipate seeing them again. They make us feel like we're really seen, like we're really heard. Like they can do those things very well when they're very interested and all of their attention is on us. Then it's like we feel like we just won the lottery, like we are in the center of their world. And even though that's not necessarily a healthy thing, it can make us lose context in the moment and really fall for the dopamine high. And especially if it goes on for a period of time, it can be quite addicting, and not in a good way, of course. So I just want you to take the self-blame off the table. If you've had this history of feeling attracted to narcissistic people and getting into relationships with them, because they're very good at exploiting emotional wounds. They're very good at playing both sides, meaning the person who is both the one that hurts us and the one that helps us and soothes us afterwards. And actually, this is a topic for another video, but actually one of the really good things to have in your life to ensure that there won't be that confusion, to get out of that triangle of, moving between the three roles of being the oppressor, being the savior or the rescuer, and being the victim, is to have people outside of the relationship that you can talk to about the relationship. Whether it's your therapist or your coach, or it's a friend, or it's a sibling, or it's your mom or your dad, or sometimes when we have a handful of people, that's even better because you can get multiple different perspectives. But if it's a trusted person you can talk to about a dynamic that doesn't feel particularly good, rather than coming back to the person to solve it, that can also help to break that dynamic of being stuck in this triangle, widen your perspective, and also allow you to come to a solution on your own or with friends, and then bring that into your relationship, rather than passively looking for this person to appease you and again become the sweet, loving, attentive self that they showed in the beginning. So let's not blame ourselves. Again, we're up against a big force here, and again, there can be this conditioning that's present. Or also, I think this is worth pointing, that sometimes people who have been raised in really healthy families, where there's minimal conflict, lots of understanding and resilience built in, and boundaries and trust and safety, that they also may have this vulnerability and get into narcissistic relationships, just because they cannot fathom that people like this exist. It's just so beyond their scope of comprehension. So I just wanted to point that out here as well. All right, so let's jump into what are the healthy signs. The early signs that you are stepping into an unhealthy relationship versus healthy relationship. And of course, this is not an exhausting list. So right off the bat, I would love to ask you to drop in a comment below about any other signs that you can think of or that you've encountered that you would like to share with the rest of us. So right away, I just want to appreciate you for that. All right, so the first unhealthy sign is intensity. And isn't that usually the case? Not always. I think there are some narcissists who maybe either know about this sign already, or and they're working hard to prevent it, to somehow gauge it so that it doesn't come across so intense. But regardless, if you notice within yourself very intense emotions awakening fairly early in getting to know this person, and that can also be done by this person creating visions of a future together right off the bat, and giving you a lot of compliments right off the bat, it's worth paying attention. Let's just say that it's worth paying attention. And if this intensity persists and then sort of drops off the cliff, and there's like nothing for a while, well, actually, I'm going to talk about this more in a minute, but that's also a really big sign. Intense emotionality, generally, right off the bat, in the beginning, is a sign that this person is attempting to emotionally manipulate you, and they're testing your boundaries, they're testing your reactions, and they're wanting to see how you're going to react when they're going to give you a lot versus when they're going to give you very little, when they're going to give you a lot of positive reinforcements, positive feedback, versus when they're going to give you some criticism and so on. It's a lot of testing. It's a lot of trying to figure out how you work so that they can then later more effectively exploit you. A healthy relationship, of course, there can still be some degree of intensity. There's those proverbial butterflies in the stomach. But again, it's more that comes from the excitement of getting to know somebody that you are having a really good conversation with, a really good connection with. You're finding out that there are a lot of interests you guys share in common, and there are common values and common ways of seeing the world, or maybe not so common, but it's interesting to exchange different points of view, and it just builds this excitement and this idea that, wow, maybe I just met somebody truly exceptional. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this over-the-top intensity. But in general, in a healthy relationship, at the early stages, it should feel pretty calm. It should feel pretty calm. There is some deviation from the baseline, obviously, but it's not jacked up so much that you feel like you may be losing control. Another thing that could be a sign of a healthy person is actually feeling very little ripples, almost feeling like this person feels so safe, I'm almost like bored, right? That could happen too, because if you've had in your life a lot of these very emotionally intense moments with narcissists, then having a conversation with somebody who doesn't generate within you these emotions can feel kind of meh, kind of blah. But that actually could be a sign that this person is really cool and is not doing anything here to impact you emotionally. So another thing to pay attention to. Number 2 is speed. So a relationship with a narcissist usually starts off very fast and continues very fast, especially in the early months. The whole idea is to break your boundaries as quickly as possible, to push you past a certain threshold when you can't live without them, which leads to obsessive thinking. And that's going to be our number 4. So we'll get there in a minute. But speed is important. Rushing intimacy is part of that speed, so trying to get you to bed as quickly as possible. This is often the case with men pushing women, but it can be also the reverse. The thing with women, and I think it could be also part of our biology, part of our genetic makeup, is that once we allow someone to be very close with us physically, we form tight bonds. And I think that men instinctually know that. And so they will try to make that happen fairly quickly, especially even if you're not ready, and they will be pushing for it. A person who's healthy and safe might still want to share on that level because they just feel really attracted to you, and they just they want to be able to share on that level. But in the event that you put up a boundary and you say that you're not ready, that this is not a good time yet, you want to take it slow, that person should immediately back off and respect that and not push you against your will. So again, more stuff to look out for. But in general, relationship with a narcissist, well, it proceeds very quickly, and I don't just mean sex. I'm also talking about planning future together and moving it together. And again, some of that is okay also in a normal relationship. There's some of these signs are kind of subtle, and you just need to lean in and listen in order to be able to detect if there is manipulation going on here. And usually you can recognize this manipulation by the intense leaning in by that person to generate this intensity, followed by withdrawal to see what you're going to do now, right? Are you going to chase after them? Are you going to get really hooked in on the wrong guy, on the wrong person, or on a wrong woman? That happens with women too, especially women who have, of course, strong narcissistic characteristics, but also borderline characteristics. These women tend to be really exploit their beauty, exploit their sex appeal, exploit that energy in order to hook a man. But so it can take place in the sexual domain, but it can also take the form of this person wanting to move in with you, this person wanting to do a lot of things together right off the bat, and showing signs of discontent and frustration when you want to do things on your own and be on your own and have some time for yourself. Because that's really important. I want to emphasize how important that is in all relationships. After you spend a day together or a weekend together or a few hours together, to have that time to reflect. It's especially important, I think, for women, because we do tend to think a lot and ruminate and reflect on things that happen, and it allows us to sort of put things into place. Some men do that too, to some extent, but in general, men have a tendency mostly to focus on whatever it is that they're doing at the time. And we women, we have no problem with doing things and still thinking and reflecting. So, but that time is important because it helps you to gain the perspective. So if the person you're starting to date has a problem with you gaining that space, there could be a problem with the person. Because if you don't have the time to do this reflection and you're being pushed along, away from point A to point B to point C quickly, you can lose your orientation. And I think that that's the point. So a healthy relationship will feel paced. It will not have some kind of a perfect rhythm. There's no such thing in the world. The world is quite chaotic. Relationships reflect that. But more or less, if you were to zoom out, you feel comfortable about this. You feel like your desires, your needs for slowing things down are respected, and it gives you a semblance of control over the relationship. I think it's really important that you don't feel like you're just, have blindfolds on and you're being led into the woods like that, but that you can have of course, you may have moments like that when you're falling into something that feels very exhilarating, but then the next moment you remind yourself of it, you take off the blindfold, you stop and pause, orient yourself and breathe, and take some time to gauge what's going on, what you're doing, do you like it, do you not like it, and then communicate that back to the person and see how they respond. And if they don't like that, if they have a problem with that, then it's probably a good idea to let this person go. But if they respect it and give you that space, then that's a very good sign. All right, so that's number 2. Number 3 is the proverbial roller coaster. So again, intensity followed by stretches of nothing, stretches of silence, uncomfortable silence, in which you it's really difficult not to try to imagine what happened, right? And it's a perfect opportunity also for you to start blaming yourself if you have that tendency. Just one second. My throat is really dry today. I've been talking a lot. I have a little cold I'm still recovering from, so excuse that hoarseness in my voice. So the roller coaster, that shouldn't be in a healthy relationship. Of course, if we just come out of a roller coastery relationship that triggered our fear of abandonment, and we're dealing with a healthy person, and that person doesn't call us or text us for 24 hours, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not necessarily a sign that this person is toxic, but it might be a good sign for us to take a breather and be with ourselves for a little bit longer without obsessing, and give that person the opportunity to also catch their breath and reflect and then get back to us. Now, if that takes longer, if that takes days or weeks, then we're obviously dealing with somebody who's highly inconsistent. And if we don't have the consistency of someone approaching us and coming towards us to want to build a relationship with us, if we don't have that indication, then again, this could be a sign that we're heading into an unhealthy territory, and very potentially dealing with an emotionally unhealthy person or someone who's out here to exploit. And the roller coaster could also be an indication that there are multiple people in this person's life. So if they're coming on really strong and then they leave you hanging, they might be romancing another source of supply. So something, again, to pay attention to. Now, these things are really important to look into while you remain detached from this person as much as it's possible. I know for some of us, it's so difficult because we're kind of wired for fast connection, but it's a good place to practice detachment. And you do this by putting your attention on things that are important to you, things that interest you, on self-care, on your business, on your friendships. So not everything is funneled into this person. So again, the contrast here between unhealthy versus healthy is roller coaster, really extreme emotionality, extreme bouts of intensity, intensity followed by nothing, which then invites a lot of reflection, maybe some confabulation as well, self-blame, things like that, very uncomfortable emotions that sort of come at you like an avalanche, versus consistency that feels calming, that makes you feel comfortable. Of course, butterflies are still there. There's still a degree of anticipation, but you don't have the sense like you're losing control over something or like you're being disrespected, and so on and so forth. So the next one, which I touched on a little bit here, number 4, is obsessiveness. So if this relationship is causing you to be obsessed about this other person, that's a sign that there's some work you need to do in yourself. And also it's a sign that you might be dealing with a person who's very unhealthy for you. So we don't want that. Again, this is a good time to practice the ability to remain detached. Again, especially in the first few months before you figure out who this person is and you're able to negotiate your needs, which is a topic for another video, and it comes usually within the first after the first month or 2 of being with that person. You're going to have to learn to let this person know what it is that you need, and then observe how they behave. And if they don't meet your needs, if there's resistance, if there's ridicule, if there's calling you needy or calling you this or that, then because you're not so involved yet, that's a good place to detach and to be able to even walk away and communicate that with your full self, not just with words, and use them as a threat, but really be in that place with yourself where if these standards are not met, if these needs are not met, then I'm not going to invest myself, because I've done this in the past, and I have for sure, and this just did not turn out well, ended up wasting a lot of my time. So on one side, we have obsessive thoughts, on the other side, the ability to remain detached, and that again is something that requires working on yourself. And then finally, our 5th point is the relationship is one-sided, swinging from one end to the other usually, versus reciprocal. So in a one-sided relationship with a person who's narcissistic, what they will do is because they know that this is the fastest way to hook someone, is with compliments, with attention, with adoration, giving them a lot of time to the point of, and time meaning spending a lot of time, texting a lot, giving a lot of their time, but also in order to control the other person, so control you. This was a big problem for me. I remember when I first exited my 9-year-long marriage with someone who was very, very disturbed and immature emotionally and manipulative. But I had no idea what I was dealing with. This came later. Actually, 8 years after my divorce, I figured out what I was dealing with when I encountered another person like that on my path. But because he was so much in my world all the time, and that was actually a consistent thing, he was always asking about what I'm doing. He was texting me a lot. He was calling me every hour or two at work. And part of me really liked it because I felt like I was really being cared for. But the truth was that he was also controlling where I was, what I was doing, and training me by showing his discontent and discomfort when I was doing my stuff, when I was seeing my friends, or when I was even going to the gym or going on a walk. I always had the sense like I need to rush home because he's waiting for me. When we split up and I entered the dating realm, where I was making a ton of mistakes, I was really awkward. I didn't know what I was doing. And I met someone who was actually quite nice, but who took his time when it came to texting me. And it wasn't like, what are you doing? Where are you going? What are you listening to? What kind of music you're listening to? I felt so scared. You know, my abandonment wound was bleeding. It was very pronounced because I thought that he didn't really care. And I ended up actually sabotaging that relationship because I wanted basically what I had with my husband within the first month of this relationship. And this guy, kudos to him for being honest with me. He said, this is a little bit too much. So I'm going to step back and, so yeah, that was a good lesson for me. So the idea is to find good balance here, and the communication and the relationship needs to be reciprocal. And so back to describing in more detail this one-sidedness that I'm here warning you about, is that with narcissists, they will come on very strong. They will give you a lot of attention, and then they will withdraw. So back to point 3, causing this roller coaster, and then back to point 4, causing this obsessive thinking, as it ties in with the initial speed that they have and the intensity that they have manufactured. So tying back to not 1 and 2, you see how they're all connected, kind of creating this cohesive whole. So it's this one-sided thing. And then it just followed by this emptiness, by this withdrawal, to then test how invested, how hooked you are, and make you be the one who goes after this person. And now they're starting to exploit you. Now they have all of your attention, right? So at first they gave you their attention, and now you're reciprocating that. But in general, we can never get back to that first period when the attention was so intense, because now that they know that they have you and the novelty has worn off, narcissists are very bored people. They like to stay on this intense level. If they don't get it, they usually look elsewhere. So now that they know you're hooked in, you're hooked to the system, you become a battery for their system of supply. They no longer have to try so hard, but you're doing it. So anyway, this is as I'm talking about it, I'm just shuddering inside because I remember how horrible that felt. Whereas on the healthy side, it's reciprocal. It's got a nice rhythm, and it's paced. You feel like you're in control. You don't feel like you're entering this closed bubble where you no longer have the ability to be with other people, because that's going to be met with resistance or with frustration or insecurity coming from this person. You're able to, that gives you the ability to remain detached, pace this relationship. There's still room for really pleasant emotions of anticipation and excitement, but they're not being cranked up to the point when you're just drowning in dopamine, right? And it's reciprocal. So when you're contacting this person responds. When you're asking them how they're feeling, they're asking you back how you're feeling. Sometimes you're the one who initiates the texting. Sometimes they are the ones. And so it just feels like a nice seesaw as opposed to a roller coaster. So these are my 5 early signs of a healthy versus unhealthy relationship. There are more here, of course. This otherwise, if I just continued, this would have been It could have been easy a 5 hour long video. So I'm just gonna leave some room for your input. If you have anything you'd like to share with others, please do so. This is really helpful. If you have questions, please do ask. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. I think I'm going to be actually taking this channel more in the direction of healthy relationships, but also I would like to talk a little bit more about somatic experiences of coming out of a narcissistic relationship, where we feel it in the body and how to release all that tension. So look out for those videos as well. So for now, I thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your comments. Share this video with someone who you think might use it, and check out my coaching, which is in the description down below. Thank you so much and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.